The ancient records of stone gambling rarely mention a battle where a Heavenly Venerate became the player who shook the entire board. After uncovering Heavenly Venerable Seals, defeating New Buqun and Leng Xiuran in a life-and-death wager, Ling Han now faces the famed Grandmaster Bao Fengyu in the high-grade stone area. Yet when a single mysterious raw stone makes even Ling Han reveal a trace of surprise, a new chapter of fortune, danger, and hidden treasures is about to unfold. Tonight, the old storyteller's ink has barely dried, for a few familiar faces have already wandered back through the mountain pass, carrying fresh rumors from the jianghu. The tea has been warmed, the chess pieces are waiting, and I must say, some of you daoists have a talent for disappearing into secluded caves and returning only when the most exciting battles begin. Come closer, share a laugh, and let us open another forgotten scroll of immortal legends together. The stone-cutting hall had already begun to settle into certainty. New Buqun and Leng Xiuran had uncovered 3 treasures, while Ling Han's chosen stones had seemed almost completely worthless. Yet, just as everyone believed the wager was finished, a faint glimmer emerged from the final raw stone. Treasure? There was actually treasure hidden inside Ling Han's last stone.
His luck is ridiculous. He actually guessed correctly for once. But can whatever is inside possibly compare with a great herb?
At most, it should be another piece of divine metal.
Several people shook their heads. Even if Ling Han had finally uncovered something, they believed it had come too late. Against a great herb, an ordinary treasure would not reverse the outcome. Then one cultivator narrowed his eyes at the exposed portion of stone. The amusement on his face slowly disappeared.
Something isn't right.
More gazes gathered, one after another. Expressions changed. The entire atmosphere overturned in an instant. People urged the stonecutter to continue, because the object was still obscured beneath layers of raw stone, and no one dared proclaim the result too early. The entire atmosphere overturned in an instant. People urged the stonecutter to continue, because the object was still obscured beneath layers of raw stone, and no one dared proclaim the result too early. The entire atmosphere overturned in an instant. People urged the stonecutter to continue, because the object was still obscured beneath layers of raw stone, and no one dared proclaim the result too early. The entire atmosphere overturned in an instant. People urged the stonecutter to continue, because the object was still obscured beneath layers of raw stone, and no one dared proclaim the result too early. New Buqun and Leng Xiuran could no longer remain calm. Their previous confidence vanished as tension crept across their faces. The reason was brutally simple. Of the 3 treasures they had uncovered, only the great herb possessed truly overwhelming value. But even a 9th-grade Heavenly Venerable Seal belonged to an entirely different class of treasure. If Ling Han's stone truly contained one, the balance of the wager would be shattered in a single stroke. Fu Tianqing finally released the breath he had been holding. Understanding dawned in his eyes. His master had apparently left the only treasure-bearing stone, and the finest stone of them all, for the very end. Inwardly, Fu Tianqing could only lament that his master had frightened him for nothing. Why not open the winning stone first? The stonecutter became incomparably careful. If this really was a Heavenly Venerable Seal, one careless slip could destroy something whose value he could never repay, not in this lifetime, nor in several lifetimes to come. Scrape by scrape, layer after layer, the grey shell disappeared. The hidden object gradually emerged from the stone, as though some ancient secret were awakening from slumber. Then a trace of primal chaos appeared. Within that hazy chaos floated the blurred outline of a seal.
It really is a Heavenly Venerable Seal.
There was no longer any doubt about its nature. The only mysteries remaining were its grade, and whether Ling Han already possessed that particular seal.
Ling Han, sell this seal to me. Name your price. Its grade is still unknown, so I would be taking quite a risk as well.
Sell it to me. I will give you a great herb.
The second offer sounded generous only for a heartbeat, Everyone nearby immediately rolled their eyes. Trading a single great herb for a Heavenly Venerable Seal? That was hardly sincerity.
I'm not selling.
Ling Han dismissed every offer without hesitation. Even if the seal turned out to be one he had already mastered, he could still pass it to the Empress, who knew, his son or his daughter. A Heavenly Venerate would never complain about possessing too many Heavenly Venerable Seals. That decision revealed Ling Han's priorities clearly. Immediate profit meant little beside permanent cultivation inheritance. Divine metal could be spent, medicine could be consumed, but a Heavenly Venerable Seal could strengthen an entire circle of trusted companions and descendants. The disappointed bidders sighed, though none were surprised. Few cultivators would willingly sell such a treasure. Then, almost as one, the crowd turned sympathetic gazes toward New Buqun and Leng Xiuran. The two men's faces had gone pale. Everything had looked settled only moments earlier, yet a single stone had reversed victory and defeat. Neither New Buqun nor Leng Xiuran believed Ling Han truly understood stone gambling. If he did, why had the rest of his selections been so ordinary? To them, there was only one explanation. Ling Han's luck had become heaven-defying at exactly the right moment. Ling Han regarded them with an even smile. New Buqun and Leng Xiuran exchanged a glance. Kneeling publicly would crush their pride and leave them humiliated before everyone present. New Buqun and Leng Xiuran exchanged a glance. Kneeling publicly would crush their pride and leave them humiliated before everyone present. New Buqun tried first to bargain his way out.
Ling Han, I can help you gamble on stones for an entire year without charging anything. How about that?
A murmur swept through the spectators. New Buqun's ability had already been demonstrated. A full year of free assistance from a skilled stone gambler could yield astonishing profits. In the eyes of the crowd, Ling Han had every reason to accept. Ling Han's expression, however, turned cold.
What is this? Do you want to die?
Ling Han did not enjoy killing without reason, but a wager had been agreed upon openly. New Buqun had lost and was now attempting to renege. That changed everything. In the martial world, strength mattered, but reputation and rules mattered as well. If wagers could simply be discarded when the result became painful, then every contest of honor would become meaningless. Ling Han's ruthlessness here was less about 10 kowtows than about forcing his opponents to bear the consequences they had willingly accepted. With a single terrifying glance from Ling Han, New Buqun's knees gave way. He was merely a ninth heaven celestial king. Before Ling Han, whose battle prowess reached the 4th tier, resistance was nothing more than wishful thinking. Once New Buqun had fallen to his knees, his remaining resistance collapsed. Humiliation was unavoidable either way. Reneging on a public wager would stain his reputation, while provoking Ling Han might cost him far more than face. 10 heavy kowtows followed in succession, not one was omitted. New Buqun rose again with fury blazing in his eyes, but Ling Han did not spare him another thought. Leng Xiuran refused to surrender so easily. Pride surged through him, and he reached for the greatest shield he possessed, his father's name. Leng Xiuran refused to surrender so easily. Pride surged through him, and he reached for the greatest shield he possessed, his father's name.
My father is Leng Dao, a 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate. Leng Dao means nothing here. Kneel, otherwise I will kill you on the spot.
Leng Xiuran wanted desperately to remain defiant, but his courage could not support the act. The wager had been fair. If he refused to honor it, Ling Han would have justification to kill him, and even Leng Dao would have difficulty using that death as a legitimate excuse for vengeance. Worse still, Ling Han had already shown that his threats were not empty. Leng Xiuran did not dare gamble his life on the hope that Ling Han would suddenly show mercy. Slowly, Leng Xiuran knelt. Rage burned in his eyes, and within his heart he resolved to seek his father's aid and have Ling Han killed. 10 kowtows followed. Only after both men had paid the wager did Ling Han turn back to his prize. Calmly, he reached out, seized the Heavenly Venerable Seal, and pressed it directly into his mind. The result pleased him. It was indeed a 9th grade seal, but more importantly, it was one that he had never mastered before. For Ling Han, this transformed the entire contest from mere humiliation of his opponents into genuine cultivation profit. Even a 9th grade seal expanded his foundation, and unlike an ordinary treasure, its value could follow him directly into future battles. Nearby, New Buqun and Leng Xiuran began whispering. Their expressions shifted as resentment turned into another plan. After a short discussion, both looked toward Ling Han once more. Ling Han gave them a brief glance. New Buqun believed he understood exactly why he had lost. The low-grade region contained too few valuable treasures, which made luck far too influential. Ling Han had merely stumbled upon the single exceptional stone. Ling Han gave them a brief glance. New Buqun believed he understood exactly why he had lost. The low-grade region contained too few valuable treasures, which made luck far too influential. Ling Han had merely stumbled upon the single exceptional stone. The mid-grade region was different. Treasures appeared there more frequently, and their value was substantially greater. With more opportunities to demonstrate true stone gambling skill, New Buqun intended to reclaim everything he had lost.
Fine. The winner takes everything the loser obtains. Agreed.
Such stakes were not unusual. In countless contests across the martial world, victory meant taking everything the defeated side had placed on the table. But Leng Xiuran was not finished. His eyes sharpened, and the resentment he had swallowed during those 10 kowtows finally surfaced. Ling Han could not help laughing. Ling Han could not help laughing. Ling Han could not help laughing. The disparity was absurd. Ling Han was a 2nd-tier Heavenly Venerate whose battle prowess could leap directly into the 4th tier. Leng Xiuran was merely a 1st-tier Heavenly Venerate. This was no ordinary difference of 1 cultivation tier. Ling Han's actual combat strength crossed multiple levels, meaning Leng Xiuran's own life held almost no threatening weight in a direct confrontation. His challenge came from wounded pride, not favorable odds.
Are you afraid?
Ling Han's amusement did not fade.
Fine. Since you no longer want your life, I'll collect that dog's life for the heavens.
Leng Xiuran nearly exploded from fury. He was a dignified Heavenly Venerate, an existence that stood above countless cultivators, yet Ling Han had just compared his life to that of a dog. Then Fu Tianqing calmly added another blade to the wound.
Master, the large black dog might bite you when he hears that.
Leng Xiuran glared at Fu Tianqing as well. To him, even the disciple was now joining in the mockery. And at this point, the second wager carried far greater danger than the first. New Buqun wanted to restore his reputation as a stone gambler, while Leng Xiuran wanted to restore wounded dignity. Those two motives had now pushed them from losing face into staking treasure, and even life itself. Ling Han had no concern at all. In his eyes, victory was already assured. Even if Leng Dao himself had somehow been placed on the gambling table, Ling Han would not have been intimidated. Ling Han had no concern at all. In his eyes, victory was already assured. Even if Leng Dao himself had somehow been placed on the gambling table, Ling Han would not have been intimidated. The group left the low-grade stones behind and entered the mid-grade region. Here, the scene changed immediately. There were far fewer raw stones, yet the area itself was more expansive. Each stone stood apart from the others, like an ancient artifact displayed for careful inspection. Even the cheapest stone demanded 10 pieces of divine metal. Larger stones with more promising appearances could cost as much as 100 pieces. And deeper within the area rested several so-called most valuable pieces. Divine metal was not enough to purchase them at all. Anyone who wanted those stones had to offer treasures of comparable rarity. supremely valuable medicine, or even Heavenly Venerable Seals. The battlefield had changed. In the low-grade region, one extraordinary stone had overturned everything. In the mid-grade region, treasures were more common, prices were harsher, and mistakes would become exponentially more expensive. If New Buqun truly possessed the advantage he claimed, this was where it should finally reveal itself. Yet Ling Han had already shown a confidence that suggested the next reversal might be even more merciless than the first. The wager had already crossed beyond wealth, pride, or reputation. This time, a human life stood upon the gambling table. New Buqun looked far more composed than before. There was almost no pressure weighing upon him. Even if this gamble ended in defeat, the one who would pay with his life was Xiuran, not him. Thus, he stood with the detached calm of an outsider, watching another man's fate. New Buqun looked far more composed than before. There was almost no pressure weighing upon him. Even if this gamble ended in defeat, the one who would pay with his life was Xiuran, not him. Thus, he stood with the detached calm of an outsider, watching another man's fate.
All right.
There were roughly 3,000 raw stones in the mid-grade area. For ordinary stone appraisers, such a number would have been exhausting. But at Ling Han's present speed, a single day was enough for him to examine them all. News of the life-and-death stone gamble spread through the raw stone lane like wildfire. Even the shopkeeper himself came to watch. He was a white-haired old man, whose appearance seemed frail and weathered. Yet not a single person present dared to underestimate him, for beneath that decrepit exterior stood a fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate. The sight itself was enough to make one lament how greatly the world had changed. A dignified fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate was actually serving as the shopkeeper of a raw stone lane. But this was not because he lacked ambition. On the contrary, the position gave him an extraordinary advantage. Whenever some astonishing treasure was cut from stone, he would have the first opportunity to bid for it. With the wealth of a fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate behind him, and enough authority to apply a little pressure when necessary, very few cultivators would refuse to give him face. He bore the title Great Clouds, and had already cultivated for more than a dozen epochs. Cultivators crowded around the gambling ground. Many were not merely here for excitement. They wanted to observe New Buqun carefully, hoping that by watching a raw stone grandmaster at work, they might steal even the smallest fragment of insight. Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate granted Ling Han and New Buqun special permission to personally select their raw stones and postpone payment until the entire contest had concluded. New Buqun immediately rushed into the sea of stones. He was merely at the 9th heaven. Taking out several pieces of divine metal was possible, but paying a dozen or several dozen pieces at once was beyond him. Only when supported by an immensely wealthy patron could he freely choose from a place like this. There was nothing strange about that. He had not been a raw stone grandmaster for very long, and naturally had not yet accumulated the terrifying fortune that older experts possessed. Ling Han likewise wasted no time. He understood that skill did not erase luck from stone gambling. If New Buqun happened to stumble upon the 10 most valuable stones in the entire area, then even Ling Han's extraordinary ability might not be enough to reverse the result. That was the cruel balance of stone gambling. Perception could narrow the heavens, but a single stroke of impossible fortune could still shatter calculation. Ling Han's advantage was information, yet even perfect information could not completely erase probability. The two men fell silent. No taunts, no boasts. Only concentration remained as they moved through the stones, one searching by experience, the other probing with a method no one present could comprehend. Time slipped away without sound. One day was terribly short, and before long the hour of judgment arrived. Xiuran could no longer maintain complete composure. His life and death would be decided by the stones lying before them. Ling Han had already examined every raw stone once. New Buqun, however, had managed to inspect only about half. Although the mid-grade area contained far fewer stones than the lower-grade region, every piece was of much higher quality. That very superiority made them harder to distinguish. When inferior stones were rare, separating the merely excellent from the truly priceless became exponentially more difficult. A faint smile touched Ling Han's face. Among the stones New Buqun had never even examined, at least 4 were valuable enough to rank among the top 10. Ling Han did not believe New Buqun's luck could be so outrageous that he would still select an unbeatable set. New Buqun stretched out his hand. With a powerful grabbing motion, 10 raw stones immediately flew through the air and gathered before him. New Buqun stretched out his hand. With a powerful grabbing motion, 10 raw stones immediately flew through the air and gathered before him. Ling Han moved at almost the same instant, drawing 10 stones into his possession, as calmly as though the outcome had already been written. Both men handed their selections to the raw stone-lane staff. The stonecutters raised their blades, and the true battle began. The first stone was opened. Scrap. Disappointment flashed across New Buqun's face. He had been brimming with confidence. In the mid-grade area, he had expected virtually every selection to yield something. Yet his very first stone contained nothing. Fortunately for him, Ling Han's first stone was also worthless. Then came the second pair. This time, both stonecutters became visibly more careful. The chance of uncovering treasure in the mid-grade region was high, and one reckless cut could damage an object worth a fortune. Only a few strokes of the blade had fallen on New Buqun's stone when someone shouted. Only a few strokes of the blade had fallen on New Buqun's stone when someone shouted. The blades continued peeling away thin layers of stone. Then the crowd's eyes brightened. The blades continued peeling away thin layers of stone. Then the crowd's eyes brightened. New Buqun's stone contained a great herb. Ling Han's, by comparison, held only a piece of divine metal. The gap between the two treasures was enormous. There was scarcely any comparison. Yet no one began bidding. Under the rules of this wager, everything would belong to the eventual victor. Until the final stone was opened, even the owner of this great herb remained uncertain.
That great herb is cyan. Its grade is 1 level above the previous one. You couldn't exchange it even for 1,000 pieces of gold.
Although bidding had not yet begun, the treasure still had to be appraised. The age and value of these peerless great herbs followed a 7-color hierarchy: red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. Red represented the oldest and most valuable, while purple was the youngest. It was said that the most precious medicine ever cut from a raw stone had been orange. That single supreme medicine had once enabled a 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate to break through into the 5th tier. That legend explained why medicinal treasures stood above ordinary wealth. Divine metal could forge weapons, but a sufficiently ancient great herb could alter a Heavenly Venerate's cultivation path itself. At that level, the difference between wealth and destiny became almost indistinguishable. New Buqun stared for a moment before bursting into delighted laughter. Even in the mid-grade area, uncovering a cyan great herb was extraordinarily rare. A trace of regret even entered his heart. Had he known this stone contained such a treasure, he would have preferred to buy it for himself. Leng Xiuran's rigid expression relaxed. For the first time since the wager began, he seemed able to breathe. Then came the third pair. New Buqun's stone yielded nothing. Ling Han's stone, however, revealed a flicker of color.
There's something inside. It's green. Could it be divine metal? It's still impossible to tell.
Uncertain whether the hidden object was divine metal or something rarer, the stonecutter dared not make any large movements. He shaved away the stone layer by layer, his blade moving with exquisite restraint. Then the surrounding cultivators inhaled sharply as one. A great herb. And not merely any great herb, it was green. According to the seven-color hierarchy, green stood above cyan. There was no need for debate, no need for complicated valuation. Ling Han had seized the advantage. Leng Xiuran's expression collapsed at once. This was no ordinary loss of face. His own life had been wagered on New Buqun's judgment.
Young Master Leng, don't worry. The contest is far from finished. Please believe me, I will definitely turn defeat into victory.
Leng Xiuran forced down the panic hammering in his chest and nodded. He remembered the previous gamble. Ling Han had once reversed an apparently losing situation with the final raw stone. If Ling Han could do it, why could they not? That uncertainty was precisely what made stone gambling so mercilessly addictive. Before the last stone was cut, victory was never secure, defeat was never final, and hope could survive long after reason had begun to die. The fourth pair was opened. Both stones were scrap. Then came the fifth pair. Ling Han unearthed another piece of divine metal. New Buqun, however, uncovered another great herb. It was purple, the lowest grade among the seven colors. Even when the cyan and purple herbs were combined, they still could not match Ling Han's green great herb. Yet New Buqun had at least narrowed the gap. The sixth pair followed. Ling Han once again obtained divine metal. New Buqun's fortunate streak continued. Another great herb appeared, and this time it was cyan. With three great herbs now gathered on New Buqun's side, their combined value could just barely contend with Ling Han's single green herb. Leng Xiuran steadied himself again. In his eyes, the two sides had almost returned to the same starting point. Ling Han remained utterly calm. He had already grasped the entire contest within his hands. The contrast was revealing. Leng Xiuran's emotions rose and fell with every cut, because he could see only the treasures already exposed. Ling Han had examined the entire field beforehand. One man was reacting to the present. The other was playing according to knowledge of the future possibilities. The seventh pair was opened. Ling Han's stone was empty. New Buqun's contained yet another purple great herb. Purple was merely the lowest medicinal grade, but quantity had begun to matter. With 4 great herbs combined, New Buqun's total value now slightly surpassed Ling Han's green herb. The reason was simple. Great herbs of these grades could improve cultivation and reduce the vast time required to accumulate power, but they could not necessarily break the barrier between cultivation levels. According to legend, only an orange great herb possessed the miraculous ability to facilitate advancement into the next tier. That created an enormous dividing line in value. 1 orange great herb could be worth more than 10 yellow ones. Leng Xiuran's tension faded once more. A smile even crept onto his face. This time, he was convinced victory belonged to him. The 8th pair was opened. Both were scrap. Then the 9th pair. Again nothing. 9 stones had been cut on each side. Everything now rested upon the 10th. If both final stones were worthless, then Leng Xiuran would unquestionably win the gamble and keep his life. Fu Tianxing watched from the side, inwardly tormented by the suspense. Though he possessed no evidence, he had an almost instinctive certainty that the entire sequence of revealed stones had somehow been anticipated by Ling Han. Inwardly, Fu Tianxing could only complain that his master truly knew how to torment people whenever he decided to play with an opponent. And perhaps that was exactly Ling Han's intention. If victory had been overwhelming from the beginning, there would have been no lesson in it. By allowing hope to rise again and again, the final reversal, if it came, would strike with far greater force. Around them, the raw stone lane had fallen into an oppressive silence. A 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate watched. Experts held their breath. Leng Xiuran stared at the final stone as though staring at the gate between life and death. Ling Han alone remained serene. Ling Han alone remained serene. The two stonecutters reached for the final raw stones. Blades descended, stone dust drifted into the air, and with one man's life hanging upon the result, the last layer of mystery began to fall away. The wager had reached its final cut. Beneath countless watching eyes, New Buqun's chosen raw stone was peeled apart layer by layer. The stonecutter moved with extreme caution, yet when the final shell fell away, there was nothing inside. No treasure, no medicine, no divine metal, only worthless scrap. Disappointment immediately crossed the faces of both New Buqun and Leng Xiuran. Even so, neither surrendered hope. Ling Han still had one stone left to open, and in their minds, the chance of his stone being empty was hardly small. Even if he produced divine metal, that alone would not overturn the wager. Then the blade descended upon Ling Han's raw stone. A few careful cuts later, a faint haze seeped from within. It was indistinct and mysterious, like mist born from primal chaos itself. The entire raw stone lane erupted, another Heavenly Venerable Seal. Such treasures had vanished from sight for ages, yet now two had appeared almost one after another. Some called Ling Han heaven-defyingly fortunate. Others began to wonder whether fortune had anything to do with it at all. Luck could explain one miraculous selection. Two consecutive successes were different. At that point, coincidence began to look increasingly like mastery, and Ling Han's disguise as an ignorant newcomer was collapsing before everyone's eyes. Whispers spread through the crowd. Could Ling Han truly be a Grandmaster of raw stone? Across from him, Leng Xiuran's complexion drained of color. For New Buqun, defeat meant humiliation. For Leng Xiuran, the wager had been far more ruthless. His life was on the table. Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate, however, saw something else entirely. His eyes brightened. Two Heavenly Venerable Seals had appeared before him in a single gambling session. Whatever else happened, the harvest had already become extraordinary.
I concede I lost.
New Buqun did not bother arguing. The outcome was undeniable. The advantage he had accumulated earlier could not compare to the value of a Heavenly Venerable Seal. Besides, he had merely selected stones for someone else. Defeat bruised his reputation, but it did not take his wealth or his life. There was no second kowtow waiting for him either. That did not mean he intended to forget what had happened. In New Buqun's eyes, Ling Han had deliberately concealed his skill, pretending to be harmless while leading him directly into humiliation. He had already decided that he would seek out his senior brother and challenge Ling Han again. New Buqun simply refused to believe that their side could continue losing to this mysterious raw stone expert. Ling Han calmly collected the spoils. Every medicinal treasure New Buqun had previously unearthed now passed into his hands. The wager had been clear. The victor claimed everything. Then Ling Han turned toward Leng Xiuran.
The wager is over. End your own life.
Leng Xiuran's entire body trembled. He had spent an unimaginable amount of time climbing beyond the common world, becoming a Heavenly Venerate capable of transcending ordinary regulations. After reaching such heights, how could he willingly throw everything away?
It'll give you a Heavenly Venerable Seal. Take it and spare my life.
Ling Han merely shook his head. Anger rose beneath Leng Xiuran's fear. He was still a Heavenly Venerate. In his mind, how could the life of someone at his level possibly be treated as though it were worth nothing? Anger rose beneath Leng Xiuran's fear. He was still a Heavenly Venerate. In his mind, how could the life of someone at his level possibly be treated as though it were worth nothing? Anger rose beneath Leng Xiuran's fear. He was still a Heavenly Venerate. In his mind, how could the life of someone at his level possibly be treated as though it were worth nothing? At that moment, Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate finally intervened.
Ling Han, there is no need to drive matters to the absolute end. Give me some face and treat the life wager as nothing more than heated words. You have already gained enough today.
Relief flooded Leng Xiuran. Only then did he recall that Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate seemed to have some old friendship with his father.
Many thanks, my lord.
In Leng Xiuran's mind, the crisis was finished. A fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate had personally stepped forward. Ling Han was merely second-tier. Refusing such an expert's request seemed almost unthinkable. Ling Han looked directly at Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate.
And what does this have to do with you?
The fourth-tier expert's brow tightened.
I am asking you to give me face. Are you truly unwilling?
First, I have no intention of giving it. Second, you are not worthy of that much face.
Silence struck the lane harder than thunder. Even Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate froze for an instant. He had never expected outright rejection, much less contempt. Between fourth tier and second tier stood two entire cultivation levels. Under ordinary logic, the difference should have been overwhelming. This was no longer merely an argument over Leng Xiuran. It had become a collision between cultivation hierarchy and Ling Han's absolute refusal to bow simply because someone possessed a higher realm. Great Clouds relied upon status. Ling Han relied upon strength.
Good, very good. Then I will interfere. Let me see how you intend to kill someone right before me.
Ling Han's gaze remained cold.
Then more than one person may die today.
Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate sneered. To him, the threat was absurd. A second-tier Heavenly Venerate threatening a fourth-tier was practically inviting destruction.
Leng Xiuran, leave. I would like to see who dares touch you while I am here.
Leng Xiuran immediately obeyed. Whatever debt this favor created could be handled by his father later. Right now, surviving was all that mattered. But the instant he tried to leave, Ling Han moved. He appeared directly in Leng Xiuran's path. Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate had been stationed here precisely to suppress trouble. If someone attempted to seize raw stones or break the rules and flee, he was the authority responsible for settling the matter without depending upon the experts of neighboring stone lanes. Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate had been stationed here precisely to suppress trouble. If someone attempted to seize raw stones or break the rules and flee, he was the authority responsible for settling the matter without depending upon the experts of neighboring stone lanes. Yet Ling Han did not stop. The 14th seal ignited. In a heartbeat, Ling Han's power surged 47-fold. The pressure within him exploded like a sealed ancient sea suddenly breaking through its banks. This was the terrifying value of a high-level Heavenly Venerable Seal. It did not change Ling Han's cultivation tier, but for the duration of its activation, it multiplied the force he could unleash to a level that shattered ordinary expectations of realm suppression. Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate struck. Ling Han answered with a single punch. Boom! The fourth-tier expert's attack was blasted apart. Ling Han never even broke stride. He crossed the remaining distance and clamped one hand around Leng Xiuran's neck. Leng Xiuran's eyes widened in horror. He had believed that a fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate standing behind him was an unbreakable shield. Yet Great Clouds had failed to delay Ling Han for even a breath. He tried to resist, but before Ling Han's overwhelming strength, the difference between them was cruelly obvious. A first-tier Heavenly Venerate was reduced to helplessness. Behind them, Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate staggered backward, 1 step, 2 steps, then more. Only after 17 consecutive steps did he finally stabilize himself. By then, Leng Xiuran was already hanging from Ling Han's grasp like a defeated captive. Shock swept through the spectators. Some stared with mouths open, unable to reconcile what they had just witnessed. A fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate had been driven backward by someone of the second tier. Everyone knew Ling Han had shattered records before. Everyone knew he was abnormal even among geniuses. But knowledge was one thing. Seeing him cross 2 cultivation levels and overpower the attack of a fourth-tier expert with their own eyes was another. The same question began passing from one cultivator to another. Was this what a truly peerless monster looked like? Even names such as Xin Chi Hu and Wu Hao Yang entered the whispers. When those supreme talents had been second-tier Heavenly Venerates, could they have displayed battle prowess this outrageous? The comparison mattered because Ling Han was no longer merely being measured against ordinary Heavenly Venerates. The crowd had begun instinctively placing him beside the greatest monsters of his generation. One exchange had changed the scale by which they judged him. Ling Han, however, did not even spare Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate another glance. In his judgment, an ordinary fourth tier like Great Cloud's could at most contend evenly with him. Such an opponent was not enough to earn his fear. His attention remained entirely on Leng Xiuran.
A debt owed to me must be repaid. No one is exempt.
Cold terror spread through Leng Xiuran. Until moments ago, he had still believed his father's name could become his final protection. But what use was borrowed prestige when even Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate could not suppress Ling Han? His arrogance finally shattered.
Spare me, please. Spare my life.
With his last shield gone, there was nothing left but pleading. Ling Han's expression did not change. Destructive power surged from Ling Han's right hand. Destructive power surged from Ling Han's right hand. In an instant, Leng Xiuran's life was extinguished. Then something strange happened again. A majestic force flowed from the fallen Heavenly Venerate into Ling Han, transforming into nourishment that strengthened his cultivation. Ling Han frowned. It had happened before, and now it had happened again. Rapid cultivation growth should have been a blessing, yet this method of gaining power was far too strange. He still could not identify its origin, and that uncertainty left a shadow in his heart. This was the one part of the victory Ling Han could not celebrate. Power that arrived without a clear mechanism was also power he could not fully understand or control. For a cultivator who had survived by comprehending every step of his own path, that mystery was more unsettling than any open enemy. And if this strange nourishment continued appearing whenever powerful enemies fell, then the question would no longer be how quickly Ling Han could advance, but what hidden cause lay behind that terrifying gift. Across the lane, Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate stared at Ling Han with murderous intensity. He had felt the terrifying force behind Ling Han's attack, but he also believed he understood its source. Ling Han possessed Heavenly Venerable Seals far superior to his own, allowing him to unleash a monstrous burst of strength. To Great Cloud's, however, explosive power was not the same as endless power. His strategy was therefore simple. Survive Ling Han's terrifying empowered state. If the advantage from the Heavenly Venerable Seal could not finish the battle immediately, then prolonged combat would eventually depend on their ordinary foundations and sustained battle prowess. Great Clouds believed that was where his two-tier cultivation advantage would reassert itself. He convinced himself that if he could endure that first storm, he would still be able to suppress this impossibly young freak. Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate's killing intent sharpened.
Brat, between you and me, only one will leave alive.
Ling Han showed no fear. Faced with the challenge hanging over Culmination City like a drawn blade, he merely gave a faint smile. The Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate stared at him coldly. Killing intent simmered behind those ancient eyes, restrained only by the countless powerful existences gathered within the city. The Great Clouds, Heavenly Venerate stared at him coldly. Killing intent simmered behind those ancient eyes, restrained only by the countless powerful existences gathered within the city.
If you dare step outside the city, I will definitely take your life.
Their strength was extremely close. If two experts of this level truly unleashed everything, The resulting battle could devastate Culmination City itself. The Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate was a 4th tier, but even he dared not create such a disaster beneath the eyes of so many high-level Heavenly Venerates. This was not mercy. It was restraint forced upon him by the balance of power within the city. Ling Han casually waved one hand.
Whatever.
In Ling Han's eyes, the matter was already simple. If this old man insisted on hunting him down, then Ling Han would simply kill him when the time came. The Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate gave a cold snort, swept his sleeves and departed. Yet the murderous light in his eyes did not fade. Ling Han had slain the son of his old friend before him, but vengeance was only one reason for his hostility. The Heavenly Venerable Seals Ling Han possessed were an even greater temptation. If he could kill Ling Han during their battle, he could avenge the dead, and then extract those precious seals for himself. Such greed made his killing intent far more dangerous than simple anger. He was not merely seeking blood, he was already calculating the spoils. Ling Han could not know every thought within the 4th tier's mind, but he could guess enough. A cold sneer touched his lips. Since trouble was already waiting for him, he might as well make full use of his time in Culmination City and sweep away the finest treasures hidden throughout the raw stone lanes.
Master, should we leave?
Ling Han immediately glared at his disciple. Of all people, this brat was particularly irritating. Fu Tianxing was constantly exchanging knowing looks with Ling Shi, Ling Han's precious daughter, and apparently possessed no understanding whatsoever of a father's desire for proper restraint.
What are we leaving for?
Ling Shi walked over with a smile.
Father.
It was only a single word, spoken sweetly, yet Ling Han understood the warning perfectly. He might possess overwhelming martial strength, but before his own daughter, there were battles he could never win. So he swallowed his complaints and returned, rather indignantly, to selecting stones. Without an official gamble underway, Ling Han had no reason to make a spectacle of himself. He quietly selected only those raw stones that actually contained treasures and purchased them without cutting them open on the spot. Revealing their contents here would only advertise the raw stone lane for free. A true harvest did not require applause. When one already knew where fortune was buried, flaunting every discovery merely invited more eyes, more greed, and more trouble. Ling Han preferred to profit quietly, although, after everything he had already done, calling him inconspicuous was perhaps a little generous. He continued through the lane, using his extraordinary ability to inspect stone after stone. He selected every raw stone he found, that concealed a great herb or a Heavenly Venerable Seal. Yet such treasures were exceedingly rare, even in the mid-grade area. After his search, he had chosen only 7 stones, and every one of those 7 contained a great herb. As for Heavenly Venerable Seals, there were none. Such priceless things could hardly be scattered everywhere. Ling Han had already enjoyed astonishing fortune by unearthing one from each of the previous areas. Just as Ling Han decided that he had done enough for the day and would continue tomorrow, a familiar voice rang out from behind him.
Ling Han, do you dare accept another gamble?
Even with his ability to perceive what lay inside raw stones, Ling Han was not accomplishing something that should normally be possible. Heavenly Venerable Tier Divine Sense could not simply penetrate these mysterious stones, and forcing his own special perception across more than 10,000 of them had taken its toll. He was beginning to feel tired. He turned and found New Buqun standing there. Ling Han almost found the sight amusing. Apparently, 2 defeats had still not been enough to teach this fellow caution.
Haven't you lost enough yet?
New Buqun's pride burned. In his own mind, those 2 losses did not prove that Ling Han possessed superior ability. Ling Han had simply been absurdly lucky, unearthing a Heavenly Venerable Seal every single time. Some raw stone lanes could cut open their entire inventory and still fail to reveal even one. New Buqun therefore refused to blame his own skill. His rate of finding valuable stones had not been inferior to Ling Han's. Even genuine raw stone grandmasters could not literally see through stone, and by ordinary standards, Buqun's previous choices had already been quite good. His mistake was not incompetence, but arrogance. He judged Ling Han according to the limits of conventional stone gambling, never imagining that Ling Han possessed an ability outside those limits.
This time my senior brother will compete with you.
Only then did Ling Han properly examine the man beside him. He appeared to be in his 20s, smiling pleasantly and seeming far more approachable than Buqun. Yet a closer look revealed something subtler. His arrogance was not smaller than Buqun's. It was deeper. Buqun did not even stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Instead, he had carefully withdrawn about 9 meters, behaving less like a companion than someone respectfully escorting a senior. The young man's status was obvious before he even spoke.
Brother Ling, my name is Bao Fengyu.
Bao Fengyu clasped his hands politely. Ling Han, however, offered only the bare minimum response. No flattery, no declaration that he had long admired Bao Fengyu's reputation, not even the usual polite pretense. Bao Fengyu's smile stiffened almost imperceptibly. Wherever he went, others respectfully addressed him as Grandmaster Bao. Ling Han's indifference immediately struck at the pride cultivated by countless years of admiration. No flattery, no declaration that he had long admired Bao Fengyu's reputation. Not even the usual polite pretense. Bao Fengyu's smile stiffened almost imperceptibly. Wherever he went, others respectfully addressed him as Grandmaster Bao. Ling Han's indifference immediately struck at the pride cultivated by countless years of admiration. The remaining crowd, however, reacted very differently. Upon hearing Bao Fengyu's name, astonishment rippled through the raw stone lane. He was the true disciple of Grandmaster Xuanlai, and his achievements in stone gambling were renowned. Rumor even claimed that he had once personally unearthed a primitive beast. People who had not yet dispersed hurried forward to greet him, repeatedly addressing him as Grandmaster Bao. Only then did a trace of satisfaction return to Bao Fengyu's expression.
This Bao Fengyu really has some background, Master. You need to be careful.
Fu Tianxing drew closer as he spoke. Ling Han instinctively prepared another glare, but a glance from Ling Shi stopped him halfway. The mighty Ling Han had no choice but to change course. He almost forced every word through clenched teeth. The daughter he had cherished for so long appeared closer and closer to being stolen away by this shameless disciple. Yet Ling Han was expected to smile politely. His temper desperately needed somewhere else to go. He almost forced every word through clenched teeth. The daughter he had cherished for so long appeared closer and closer to being stolen away by this shameless disciple. Yet Ling Han was expected to smile politely. His temper desperately needed somewhere else to go. He could not beat the so-called heart-stealing thief with Ling Shi watching, but conveniently 2 other fools had walked straight to his door. Ling Han's gaze shifted toward Bao Fengyu and Buqun. Bao Fengyu's smile remained measured as he laid out his terms. Bao Fengyu's smile remained measured as he laid out his terms.
The rules remain the same. The winner takes everything. However, if you lose, I want to add another condition. You will return those 10 kowtows to my junior brother.
The condition was ruthless. More importantly, it revealed Bao Fengyu's absolute confidence. A man who entertained the possibility of defeat would never casually attach such humiliation to the wager. Ling Han merely smiled.
Then I'll add a condition as well. If I win, I'll give both of you a brutal beating. Don't too worry, I will leave each of you one final breath.
Bao Fengyu's brows immediately furrowed. He was not Buqun. Buqun had only recently graduated, and had not yet opened enough raw stones to build a great reputation. Bao Fengyu was completely different. Hundreds of millions of years had passed since Bao Fengyu completed his apprenticeship. The number of raw stones he had opened was beyond counting, and countless treasures had emerged through his hands. His reputation had long since spread among Heavenly Venerates. Even 4th tier and 5th tier Heavenly Venerates often received him as an honored guest and treated him with courtesy. Over endless years, that treatment had shaped him. Praise became expectation. Respect became entitlement. Bao Fengyu's arrogance was not born in a single day. It had been carefully fed by powerful men who wanted access to his stone gambling expertise. And now Ling Han, a man who had barely acknowledged his name, openly declared that he would beat him until only a single breath remained. Fury rose within Bao Fengyu. Originally, Bao Fengyu had come only because New Buqun persuaded him. They shared the same master, and he intended to support his junior brother. Had Ling Han lowered his head and offered an apology, Bao Fengyu would not necessarily have pressed the matter too far. But after Ling Han's attitude, that possibility disappeared. Bao Fengyu was truly angered now. His choice was not accidental. Their rules declared that the winner took everything. Bao Fengyu wanted the treasures Ling Han unearthed without paying a single coin for them, and in the high-grade area, even someone relying heavily on luck could stumble upon extraordinary treasures without possessing supreme appraisal skill. His choice was not accidental. Their rules declared that the winner took everything. Bao Fengyu wanted the treasures Ling Han unearthed without paying a single coin for them, and in the high-grade area, even someone relying heavily on luck could stumble upon extraordinary treasures without possessing supreme appraisal skill. In other words, Bao Fengyu was designing the battlefield to maximize both his reputation and his potential reward. Yet he still believed this was a contest of appraisal and fortune. He did not know that Ling Han's advantage fundamentally changed the game. Ling Han waved his hand.
I'm a little tired today. Let's continue tomorrow.
For an instant, a suspicion crossed Bao Fengyu's mind. Was Ling Han afraid? Would he secretly flee Culmination City before tomorrow arrived?
Agreed.
Bao Fengyu had already made his own preparations. Later, he intended to arrange for people to watch Ling Han and prevent him from leaving Culmination City. Through hundreds of millions of years of gambling stones and dealing with powerful cultivators, Bao Fengyu had built a formidable network of connections. Calling upon several 4th-tier Heavenly Venerates to help him was no difficult matter. He had already heard that even the Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate had failed to stop Ling Han. Therefore, sending 2nd-tier or 3rd-tier experts to watch him would be meaningless. If Ling Han was to be contained, Bao Fengyu intended to use 4th tiers. The coming gamble was no longer merely about raw stones. Great Clouds wanted Ling Han's life and Heavenly Venerable Seals. Bao Fengyu wanted victory, prestige, and treasure. New Buqun wanted his humiliation erased. Yet all of them were tightening their nets around a man who already knew exactly what treasures lay hidden beneath the stone. If anything, tomorrow's contest promised to expose just how dangerous that advantage truly was. This time, Ling Han was not deliberately making Bao Fengyu wait. After probing so many raw stones, even his formidable mind had begun to feel the strain. He truly needed a period of rest. This time, Ling Han was not deliberately making Bao Fengyu wait. After probing so many raw stones, even his formidable mind had begun to feel the strain. He truly needed a period of rest. He could certainly have forced himself to continue, but there was no reason to push recklessly. The raw stones would remain where they were, and the 2 men waiting to be taught a lesson were not going anywhere either. For Ling Han, this was not retreat but calculation. When victory did not depend on haste, conserving strength was simply the wiser move. Letting his opponents stew in their own impatience was merely an added benefit. There was no inn nearby. After leaving the raw stone lane, Ling Han and his companions simply found an inconspicuous place and entered their spatial celestial tool, the celestial guest residence. where they could rest without disturbance. Such a method was convenient, but it was not invincible. In the wilderness, they would still have to remain vigilant. If a Heavenly Venerate suddenly struck the spatial tool with a palm, an ordinary spatial treasure could never guarantee their safety. That danger had long given Ling Han another idea. He wanted to gather a tremendous amount of devouring metal and forge a spatial container comparable to the Black Tower. If he succeeded, the resulting fortress would be terrifyingly difficult to breach. Even a Heavenly Venerate would have to spend considerable effort to force it open. In the past, this dream had bordered on impossible. Devouring metal was simply too rare, and Ling Han himself needed it if he wished to take that final step in his own path. But the discovery of this primitive dimension had changed the situation. In such an ancient and resource-rich place, finding another piece of devouring metal no longer seemed like an impossible undertaking. Still, that was a matter for another day. For now, Ling Han pushed the thought aside and rested. The strange art of examining raw stones might not require sword clashes or roaring heavenly power, yet exhausting the mind in this manner was no less tiring. One full day passed. Refreshed, Ling Han and his group emerged from the celestial guest residence and returned to the raw stone lane they had visited the previous day. The moment they arrived, however, Ling Han noticed something was wrong. People everywhere. Yesterday, barely 100 spectators had gathered to watch the excitement. Today, the lane had become a sea of cultivators. Even if there were not 80 or 100,000, there were certainly 30 or 40,000 packed around the area. The raw stone lane was enormous, yet under the pressure of that crowd, even this wide space seemed almost suffocatingly full. There was only one reason for such a commotion. 2 Grandmasters of raw stone were about to clash through stone gambling. Ling Han had become famous in a single stroke after defeating New Buqun and unearthing 2 Heavenly Venerable Seals in succession. After such a result, no one could dismiss his performance as mere luck. Bao Fengyu, meanwhile, had possessed a formidable reputation long before Ling Han appeared. Numerous high-level Heavenly Venerates treated him as an honored guest, and countless people wished to gain his favor. Now these 2 figures had agreed to compete, and the wager itself was unusual enough to stir even greater curiosity. Naturally, cultivators came flooding in from every direction. Ling Han scratched his head when he saw the spectacle. Had he known this would happen, he might have chosen somewhere else. After all, their duel was giving this raw stone lane an enormous amount of free publicity. Then again, Ling Han quickly dismissed the thought. This place did not belong to the Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate, so there was no reason for him to care. Bao Fengyu was already waiting. The moment he saw Ling Han appear, the coldness in his face sharpened. He had endured an entire day of waiting. By now, whatever pleasant and approachable mask he normally wore had been burned away by irritation. Ling Han looked genuinely surprised, as though Bao Fengyu had just asked the strangest question imaginable. Ling Han looked genuinely surprised, as though Bao Fengyu had just asked the strangest question imaginable.
Why wouldn't I? I am a great Heavenly Venerate, while you are merely a 9th Heaven Celestial King. How could I possibly be afraid of you? You are showing disrespect to a Heavenly Venerate. Be careful, or I might skin you for it.
Bao Fengyu's expression changed violently. Those words struck a place he preferred not to look at. The current age had elevated raw stone grandmasters to extraordinary heights. Because they could uncover treasures that even Heavenly Venerates coveted, powerful experts surrounded them with praise, gifts, and deference. But everyone understood one unavoidable truth. One day, the raw stones of this primitive dimension would eventually be exhausted. And when that day arrived, a Grandmaster who possessed nothing beyond the ability to read stones would lose the foundation beneath his pride. The imbalance was dangerous. Heavenly Venerates were beings who had transcended ordinary limits, experts so exalted that even heaven itself could not casually bind them. Raw stone grandmasters currently enjoyed leverage over such beings only because they controlled access to treasures the strong desperately desired. That leverage was powerful, but temporary. For years, some grandmasters had strutted proudly before Heavenly Venerates, making these supreme experts smile, flatter them, and tolerate behavior they would never have accepted from ordinary celestial kings. Did anyone truly believe Heavenly Venerates had no temper? Once the usefulness of raw stone grandmasters disappeared, many of the debts accumulated through arrogance and humiliation would inevitably be collected. The endings of some grandmasters might become extremely miserable. Yet pride was difficult to resist when even Heavenly Venerates constantly offered praise. Bao Fengyu himself was the perfect example. His natural cultivation talent had never been exceptional. Reaching the Celestial King tier had already been difficult for him, and under ordinary circumstances, the first heaven should have been close to his limit. But fate had given him extraordinary talent in stone gambling. That single ability transformed his life. Treasures were poured upon him without restraint, and through those vast resources, his cultivation was forcefully raised all the way to the 9th heaven. However, the Heavenly Venerable tier could not be reached merely by piling treasures upon someone. For Bao Fengyu, the 9th heaven was almost certainly the final destination of his cultivation path. Even so, rising from what should have been the 1st heaven to the 9th heaven was already an astonishing change in destiny. Everything he possessed had come from his talent for raw stones. With every powerful figure who sought his favor, his pride grew. With every gift, his sense of importance swelled, and as the years passed, his heirs became greater and greater. Then Ling Han spoke a few simple words and tore through all that accumulated self-deception. Bao Fengyu was still only a 9th heaven celestial king. Ling Han was a Heavenly Venerate. Status gained through another person's need was not the same as strength gained through one's own cultivation. Ling Han's words hurt precisely because Bao Fengyu understood that distinction better than anyone. Bao Fengyu's face turned livid and resentment surged through his heart. So what if Ling Han was a Heavenly Venerate? Bao Fengyu might never personally cross into that realm, but through his mastery of raw stones, he had seen Heavenly Venerates bow their heads before him. He had even possessed enough influence to make such lofty figures kneel and kowtow when circumstances demanded it.
Enough nonsense. Begin the competition.
Ling Han studied him quietly. Had the Grandmasters of Raw Stone truly been indulged until they had forgotten their place? Fine. Today, Ling Han would strike directly at that swollen pride. The two entered the high-grade section of the Raw Stone Lane. The Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate was already waiting there. His expression was anything but pleasant. He too had been forced to accumulate an entire day of anger, and the strain was clearly visible. Bao Fengyu turned toward Ling Han. Ling Han's gaze swept over the high-grade raw stones. Bao Fengyu turned toward Ling Han. Ling Han's gaze swept over the high-grade raw stones. These stones were outrageously expensive. Even the cheapest could only be purchased using the blood of Heavenly Venerates. There were roughly 100 pieces in total. The smallest was no larger than a fist, while the largest towered more than 3 meters high. Despite their wildly different shapes and sizes, all of them shared one extraordinary feature. Their surfaces were covered by dense networks of obscure patterns, mysterious lines so profound that at first glance they almost resembled Heavenly Venerable Seals. That resemblance was merely an illusion. Even the high-grade section could produce worthless scrap. The difference was only that useless stones appeared less frequently here. while the probability of uncovering valuable treasures was considerably greater. Bao Fengyu added another condition. Ling Han agreed with complete indifference. A single day was more than enough for him. Bao Fengyu added another condition. Ling Han agreed with complete indifference. A single day was more than enough for him. Neither man wasted another word. The contest officially began. Around them, the immense crowd immediately erupted into discussion.
I never imagined Ling Han would become formidable enough to compete directly with Grandmaster Bao.
Grandmaster Bao Ling Han was right about one thing. Bao Fengyu is merely a ninth heaven celestial king who happens to know how to examine stones. Why should he act superior before a Heavenly Venerate?
Exactly. He has been spoiled by everyone around him.
Ling Han really is a troublemaker. Wherever he goes, something enormous happens. Impressive.
It is about time someone dealt a heavy blow to the pride of these so-called raw stone grandmasters. Perhaps then they will remember who they really are.
Then another voice raised a question that caused the surrounding discussion to change direction.
Have any of you noticed something strange? Until now, every famous raw stone grandmaster has been a celestial king. There has never been a Heavenly Venerate among them.
Yi, now that you mention it, that really is true.
Could there be some unique force preventing Heavenly Venerates from becoming raw stone grandmasters?
Their gazes gradually converged on Ling Han, because Ling Han had shattered that long-standing pattern. A Heavenly Venerate had finally demonstrated the ability of a raw stone grandmaster.
It is almost like a curse. Heavenly Venerates normally receive no reaction at all from Heavenly Venerable stones.
Perhaps the power of heaven and earth interferes with them.
Or maybe the fundamental powers of the Genesis world are simply incompatible with Heavenly Venerable stones.
The crowd continued making deductions. Perhaps someone had brushed against part of the truth. Perhaps every theory was wrong. But one fact could no longer be disputed. Ling Han was an anomaly. He had crossed a boundary that generations of Heavenly Venerates and stone gamblers had apparently been unable to cross. Whether this came from his unique powers or some deeper secret, his very existence was rewriting the accepted rules of stone gambling. Ling Han ignored the speculation around him and began moving slowly through the high-grade area. One hand after another reached toward the raw stones. At his present level of proficiency, he no longer needed long periods of concentration. The instant his palm made contact, the secrets hidden within a raw stone unfolded almost completely within his mind. Stone after stone passed beneath his fingertips. Ling Han silently nodded. The probability of finding treasure in the high-grade section was indeed impressive. Yet there was an important distinction. A higher chance of finding something valuable did not necessarily mean a higher chance of uncovering the most extraordinary treasures. Up to that point, he had not discovered even a single Heavenly Venerable Seal. This was the dangerous charm of stone gambling. Price could raise probability, but it could never command destiny. A low-grade stone might conceal a supreme treasure, while a stone purchased at an outrageous price could still contain disappointment. There were only about 100 raw stones here, so Ling Han could inspect them rapidly, but the rules of the duel created another problem. He could ultimately claim only 3. Thus, once he identified 3 promising stones, any superior discovery afterward would force him to replace one of his previous choices. He obviously could not seize every excellent raw stone and leave Bao Fengyu with nothing to choose from. The competition had to be decided through 3 selections. After examining roughly 20 pieces, Ling Han finally stopped. He selected his first raw stone. Hidden inside was a great herb. It was green, ancient, and filled with the weight of countless years. Ling Han continued onward. More than a dozen additional stones passed beneath his hand, before he made his second selection. This raw stone also contained a great herb, likewise green in colour. 2 selections were now settled. Ling Han kept moving, drawing closer and closer to completing a full circuit around the 100 high-grade stones. Then his palm landed on another raw stone. In that instant, the calm in Ling Han's eyes broke. A trace of unmistakable shock surfaced on his face. For a man who had already examined treasure after treasure without losing his composure, such a reaction could mean only one thing. Whatever lay inside this raw stone was far from ordinary.